Part 47. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 461. Previously, Wang Ling learned that the command post had a complete technology tree and that all kinds of buildings could be constructed at will. He couldn't help but feel a little carried away. It should be noted that in the Red Alert world, all types of buildings also have their own significance. Just as if you want to accumulate funds, if you have no other means, you must build an ore refinery. If you want to produce tank vehicles, you must have a tank factory. If you want power-consuming devices such as radars and magnetic storm coils to operate, you must have energy, that is, electricity. Originally, Wang Ling wanted to save some time and directly build various practical buildings, but now it seems that a power plant is still necessary. However, just when he was about to make the decision to build a large-scale power plant, something suddenly occurred to him. His eyes lit up, and he immediately began to give orders. Li Tong, build a nuclear reactor in the center of the base. Isn't it? The building this guy thought of at the last minute turned out to be a nuclear reactor. This thing, in layman's terms, is actually a nuclear power plant. The electricity from a nuclear power plant can completely supply the operation of one or even several bases. The huge amount of electricity generated is comparable to that of dozens of ordinary power plants. The cost and land area are naturally much more cost-effective. Too much. However, this thing uses nuclear energy after all. If it is destroyed, the energy released in that moment is simply equivalent to a small nuclear bomb, and after the explosion, there will be a large area of nuclear radiation, destructive power, and influence. It can be said to be disaster level. In normal times, when absolute safety can be guaranteed, this nuclear power plant is of course the best choice. However, many commanders on the battlefield dare not build this thing at all, for fear that it will be targeted by the Allies. Once it is exploded, the consequences will be unimaginable. However, Wang Ling dared to do things that commanders did not dare to do. I know, team leader. Li Tong didn't know the influence of this thing, so he accepted Wang Ling's order almost without thinking, and quickly issued orders to the engineering soldiers. These bug engineers would not object anymore. After the order was put in place, a group of engineers immediately took action and built a nuclear reactor in the center of the temporary base. At the beginning, nothing could be seen, but halfway through the construction, the outline of the nuclear power plant had been finalized. The commanders and other generals who were wandering around also saw it, and some commanders were frightened on the spot. In a flash, even PoortoRich quickly found Wang Ling and asked hurriedly, Wang Ling, you ordered this to be built. Do you know how destructive this thing will be if it explodes? Of course Wang Ling had his reasons for giving this order. Commander, since you have handed over the temporary commander to me, please trust me. Special circumstances will be treated with special treatment. The nuclear reactor is being built in our center. If the enemy attacks, they need to get over us first. If we all fall, the Eastern Castle will not be safe, and it doesn't matter whether the nuclear power plant will be attacked. Having said this, Wang Ling smiled confidently. Of course, let's not say whether there will be an enemy attack. Even if it does happen, we will defend the Eastern Castle, the nuclear power plant, and the dignity of our coalition forces to the death. Okay, this last sentence seemed to have reached PoortoRich's heart, and he couldn't help shouting, with your drive, it's absolutely right to hand over the position of Chief of Guard to you. Come on, good job. Yes, Coach, Wang Ling quickly responded with a military salute. The coach has passed this test, so naturally no one will object to the construction of the nuclear reactor. Many elite engineers worked hard together, and finally it was successfully completed soon. And when the nuclear power plant was built, the powerful nuclear power came into operation, and a huge amount of electricity was generated in an instant. The magnetic storm coil was successfully energized, The radar also started operating, and the outline of the electronic map appeared subconsciously. From the electronic map, we can see that in the red alert world, the holy city as a whole is equivalent to a medium-sized map, and the Oriental Castle area is on one side of this map, occupying a large area. Seeing this electronic map, Wang Ling couldn't help but feel criticized. The coalition's radar technology was indeed lagging behind the Allied spy satellites. If it is a spy satellite, it can detect all areas on the entire map at this moment. However, the radar signal is very limited and can only show a small area that was detected by troops passing by before. The places are all black unidentified areas, and it is unknown what is hidden inside. When he started playing the game, Wang Ling disliked the feeling of exploring the map from scratch. It was like a blind person trying to figure out where to go. It was very uncomfortable. However, who allowed him to be on the coalition side? Moreover, he is still a temporary commander. No matter how much he complains, he has no choice but to take on this responsibility and accept the status quo. Fortunately, a joint meeting is about to be held now. After a successful alliance, Allied technology can be used. This limitation can finally be broken. Now that there was no need to worry about the power supply, Wang Ling began to build it aggressively. Around the eastern castle, he built numerous magnetic storm coils and anti-aircraft guns one after another, almost surrounding the castle into an iron barrel. In fact, this temporary base has all the technology trees of the coalition forces. Wang Ling can just build a tank factory to produce tanks and vehicles, and then surround it with some sentry guns. This deployment is also simple. After all, there are relatively few coincidences in this world. How could we meet Yuri's troops by such a coincidence during the meeting? But Wang Ling chose the safest and surest way to be on the safe side. After the construction of these defense facilities was completed, Wang Ling issued an order to start building a tank factory. However, before the construction of the tank factory started, several Allied helicopters slowly flew in from outside the map and appeared on the electronic map. Obviously, the leaders of the Allied forces were also present. Although the Allied forces have taken a fancy to this dominant position, they still have to be polite. A group of commanders and generals, and even PoortoRich, all stood in front of the castle to greet these high-ranking Allied forces. Even as the captain of the guard, Wang Ling also stood at the edge and had the honor to participate in the reception. Under the gaze of many people, these Allied helicopters finally landed in the square in a row. The first people to get off the plane were some bodyguards and escorts, basically Allied soldiers at the rank of colonel, plus a few SEALs. Later, other senior generals and commanders of the Allied forces also appeared one after another. Seeing the leaders who were once old enemies, their faces were all a little abnormal, but they still resisted the temptation to say hello symbolically. Finally, General Bob, as the commander, and General William, the previous envoy, finally began to appear and slowly walked off the plane. This scene should have been normal, but why did Agent Tanya happen to be included in it? Although the two armies were said to be united, Wang Ling's hatred for Tanya has not weakened at all. He had never seen Agent Tanya on the battlefield before the decisive battle. Now that he finally saw it, he was filled with anger. The electromagnetic force of super-powerful energy instantly gathered in his right hand, and he rushed forward like a beast. Tanya. The epidemic is serious, and many New Year greeting activities have been omitted at home after the second day of the Lunar New Year. The year is almost over, to be honest. I have some mixed feelings in my heart, but it is not suitable to go into details here, so I will omit it. Dear book friends, this epidemic is very serious. Remember to go out less often, drink more water, disinfect frequently, and prevent colds at the same time. Don't panic too much. Many news on the internet are rumors, and others follow what others say. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 462. Tanya. This shout, like the roar of an angry dragon, was deafening. the billowing sound waves were transmitted, carrying strong anger, and shocked everyone present to tremble in their hearts. But when they were frightened for a moment, Wang Ling had already rushed towards Agent Tanya like a humanoid beast. A large amount of strong electromagnetic force in his right hand was concentrated on his fist, but he refused to launch it. He kept a straight line. He punched Agent Tanya in the head like a raptor. Wang Ling is too emotional and nostalgic. Ever since he entered the world of Red Alert, he has been under the care of the fifth instructor. Even before joining the battlefield, the fifth instructor was advising him to be careful. It can be said that the fifth instructor was the first person Wang Ling recognized when he entered the world of Red Alert, and the first person who helped him integrate into this world. Wang Ling always missed him in a special way. However, such a person died in the end under the gun of Agent Tanya. At that time, Wang Ling learned about the duality of the different dimensional system and was running away from this danger. However, when he learned about the instructor's death, he was so angry that he even diluted all his worries and returned to the battlefield. In these days, he has never forgotten or let go of this hatred, and the more it accumulates, the stronger it becomes. The moment he saw Agent Tanya today, the hatred that had been accumulated for a long time finally came to an end. He broke out and didn't even care about the occasion. Wang Ling. Stop. Stop. Wait. However, on this occasion, after all, the Allied forces and the Allied forces are discussing major matters of alliance. Any grudges between the two major forces must be temporarily put aside, let alone personal grudges. As for the coalition forces, all commanders, senior generals, and even PoortoRich were startled and hurriedly interrupted Wang Ling. Not to mention them, even the Allied forces were frightened by Wang Ling's momentum and actions. Some commanders and even General William shouted to stop. At this moment, the thoughts of the top brass of the two armies were unprecedented. Of unity. Crackling. Indeed, Wang Ling was a little angry now, but he did not lose his mind after all. Many generals shouted to stop, finally making him stop at the last moment. His fist stopped 20 centimeters in front of Agent Tanya's face. The arc wrapped around it was still flashing all the time, making a crackling electromagnetic sound, and it looked very dangerous. The fierce and hot fist wind swept across, blowing Agent Tanya's yellow hair at the temples. The hot wind hit her face, and there was a burning feeling. However, Agent Tanya's expression remained unchanged, even he did not dodge, but kept a playful smile as he looked at Wang Ling. In fact, Wang Ling stopped temporarily. Part of the reason was that the current occasion was not suitable for revenge. A group of generals stopped him and could not sell it. The other part of the reason was because of Agent Tanya. It is indeed a heroic unit of the Allied forces. Agent Tanya's reaction speed is indeed frighteningly fast. When Wang Ling stopped, the two guns of Agent Tanya were already pressed against Wang Ling's heart. But the other one was pointed at Wang Ling's chin. With her ability to kill infantry instantly, with just a slight pull of the trigger, these two guns could kill Wang Ling in an instant. Of course, if it was really a matter of life and death, Agent Tanya wouldn't survive. This scene can be said to be extremely dangerous. Whether it is Agent Wang Ling or Agent Tanya, as long as one of the two fails to control it well, they may completely break up, and there will be no possibility for the coalition and Allied forces to unite. Of course, this is a game world, and everyone else is a program. Wang Ling is the only player. If he had failed to control it just now and was blinded by hatred, then the entire process of the game world would have almost come to an end, and this player will never be able to wake up again. However, even this made the top leaders of the Allied forces furious. General Bob scolded them first. Allied forces, what do you mean? We rushed to the holy city at your request, but in the end, in front of us do you want to deal with my bodyguard? With him taking the lead, other generals and commanders who were already dissatisfied with the coalition forces also started to criticize. Allied forces, Do you think our allies are easy to bully? We came here with sincerity, but what about you? You arranged this move as soon as we met. Do you want to give us a blow? Alliance forces, you have to give us an explanation for this matter. The scene was a bit chaotic and tense for a time, and the senior leaders of the coalition forces were in the wrong. No matter how displeased the allies were, they could not express it. Although there were many radicals among them who secretly rejoiced, on the surface they still scolded Wang Ling. Wang Ling, how do you want to explain this matter? I can't give you a reason. Be careful of military law. There was no way. Wang Ling was indeed responsible for this matter, and he had to come forward. During this process, both Tanya and Wang Ling kept maintaining the confrontation. Even the arc flashing frequency on Wang Ling's fist became higher and higher. In the end, the energy was so powerful that he could not control it. The fists were shaking a little. Agent Tanya couldn't help but become curious when she saw this scene. Are you Wang Ling? I have noticed you for a long time, but I didn't expect that you are such a bad-tempered and impulsive person. You want to kill me as soon as we meet. I am very curious. I am on the battlefield. It seems that I have never met you in person. What grudge do I have against you? Crackling, crackling, crackling. The electric light on Wang Ling's fist was still flashing. Looking at Agent Tanya through this blue light, Wang Ling answered almost word for word, "You killed my most respected instructor." Oh. This reason seemed to be beyond Agent Tanya's expectation. Is it just for this one person? Isn't that enough? Wang Ling stared at her with a very fierce look. The conversation between the two of them could be heard by other generals, and they all immediately understood the reason why Wang Ling went berserk. However, it is one thing to understand, and it is another thing to admit it or not. Immediately, some Allied generals reprimanded, "Allied forces, is this your sincerity? When the two armies join forces, they must first put aside their grievances. Is this a rule? Is it only for us and none of your business? Wang Ling, stop it. This is a critical period for the two armies to unite. Let go of this grudge." PoortoRich could only endure the accusations from the Allies and turned to advise Wang Ling. Even General William of the Allied forces comforted him. "Wang Ling, I thought you were quite smart, but why did you act so confused at the critical moment? Agent Tanya killed your instructor, but it was a battle for hegemony. Isn't it normal for us to be hostile and fight each other? Moreover, you have killed many of our subordinates, and they all have comrades in arms. If they all care about each other, it is impossible for the two armies to unite." Snort. Wang Ling also knew that it was almost unrealistic to kill Tanya in this situation, and now that the generals on both sides were stopping and advising, Wang Ling simply went down the slope, and finally slowly lowered the punch, but the energy accumulated on it was the lightning never stopped. Agent Tanya also put away her guns. However, this girl also had her own arrogance and was not convinced by Wang Ling at all. The incident should have ended here, but she still kept mocking, "What a big deal I think it is. Death in there are too many coalition soldiers under my gun, and I am too lazy to remember those small characters. If I kill them, I can only blame him for his incompetence." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 463. Crackle 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 crackle. Under the ridicule of Agent Tanya, Wang Ling's anger rose in his heart, but he could not attack Tanya, so the electromagnetic flash frequency on his right hand almost exceeded the limit that Wang Ling could bear, and his whole arm was trembling with tremors. As for him, he was always staring at Tanya, his eyes almost spitting out flames, as if he could eat Agent Tanya at any time with his eyes. However, Agent Tanya was confident and expected Wang Ling not to take action. She turned a blind eye to Wang Ling's anger and continued to taunt, "I thought you were a strong person at first, but I didn't expect you to be so childish for such an inconspicuous guy. You want to take action against me before the joint meeting? It seems that I looked up to you before. Not to mention that you can't take action on this occasion. Even if you can do it, do you think you will be my opponent? Then it will only be for me. The two guns add one more sacrifice, and one more dead soul is killed by the guns." This Tanya was targeted by Wang Ling for no apparent reason. With her arrogance, how could she accept it? However, considering the situation, he could not take action against Wang Ling, so he spoke very harshly and viciously, trying to stimulate Wang Ling as much as possible. "Although it doesn't matter if you get high orally, it at least relieves your chi, right? Moreover, if Wang Ling is really irritated and he can't help but take action again, then even if Agent Tanya really takes action and shoots Wang Ling, I am afraid that the coalition generals will have to suffer the consequences of being dumb. Have you said enough?" Sure enough, Wang Ling originally hated Agent Tanya, but after receiving such harsh words, he finally couldn't help it and burst out. However, in the end, it was his consciousness as a soldier that prevailed. Wang Ling did not take action. Instead, he started to reprimand, "Tanya, do you think you are so powerful that no one in the world can be your opponent? You should be lucky that the coalition forces we are about to join forces with the allied forces, and I can't take action against you on this occasion, otherwise, if you don't tell me what will happen, you will definitely die." Swish. Crack, bang, bang. After saying that, Wang Ling seemed to be specifically trying to confirm this sentence, or just to vent his anger. He suddenly waved his right fist to one side, and the super electromagnetic energy that had been accumulated in his fist was finally released. Go out, billowing electromagnetism, like a constantly wriggling brontosaurus. On his attack route, there was a rockery sitting on a pool. This rockery is not small in size, with a height of 7 or 8 meters and a width of 5 or 6 meters. After years of wind and sun exposure, it looks very solid. But with Wang Ling's electromagnetic bombardment, a large amount of electromagnetic waves bombarded the rockery, completely exploding the entire solid rockery in an instant. Da-la-la. Da-la-la. Crackling. That's not all. This blow was an attack full of Wang Ling's anger. It had been accumulated for too long. The destructive power was really terrifying. After the explosion, the rockery shattered into pieces. Each fragment was no larger than the size of a fist, and each piece was no bigger than a fist. There was terrifying electromagnetic energy left on every piece, and arcs were still jumping when it fell to the ground. Even the pool was filled with dense currents. Looking at the dense current, there is no doubt that if someone accidentally jumps into the pool at this time, just the residual current can kill him in an instant. Fear. Fear. Wang Ling's blow shocked the entire audience. Everyone who witnessed this scene, whether they were coalition forces or allies, were all shocked by the power. Even the surrounding guards were dumbfounded. Dumbfounded, and after regaining consciousness, he suddenly took a breath of air conditioning. As the agent Tanya who was mainly targeted, she could not help but break out a drop of cold sweat on her temples when she saw the horror of Wang Ling's blow with her own eyes. If this blow fell on her, she would have absolutely no way to survive and would be killed in an instant. What frightened her the most was Wang Ling's attack distance. The rockery was 1.5 times her range. If she wanted to shoot normally, she would not be able to touch the rockery here, but Wang Ling could. It can explode in an instant, and it seems that this is not his limit distance at all. This means that Wang Ling's attack range is far greater than hers. If he confronts Wang Ling outside her range, she will definitely be the one who dies. Thinking of these for a moment will inevitably have a big blow to Tanya's proud heart. However, this hot pepper is not that easy to give up. After calming down, he quickly found Wang Ling's flaws and hit back, "You are very strong, indeed very strong, Stronger than I thought. But, you are not invincible. Your attack speed is far inferior to mine. If you are within my range, the person who will die will definitely be you. Snort. Wang Ling did not comment on this statement, just snorted coldly, and slowly walked back to his seat. In fact, Wang Ling also acquiesced to this statement. It is true that his shooting range is very long and his power is also very powerful, but just like what Tanya said, his attack speed is not as good as Tanya's double guns. With the power of Tanya's agent to kill infantry absolutely instantly, in close combat, even with Wang Ling's current power, he is no match for Agent Tanya. This comparison also made Wang Ling sigh. He has now gone through the intermediate level of strengthening, and has successively gained experience strengthening in many arms. At the same time, all the major arms have been promoted to the level of 10-star Soldier King. Agent Tanya is restricted by the system and can only be promoted to 3-star Elite, but even so, Wang Ling cannot absolutely crush her, and she may even be killed in close combat. This Agent Tanya truly deserves to be a heroic unit of the Allied forces. A puff of gunpowder smoke almost filled the air, and a battle between dragons and tigers that almost unfolded finally came to an end. However, whether the two men were fighting verbally or in actual actions, the coalition and Allied forces were caught off guard. The joint meeting had not yet been held, and the situation was already a little stiff. Pa! 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 After being embarrassed like this for a while, PoortoRich suddenly clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Wonderful. This battle is very exciting. Commander of the Allied forces, I still call you Bob. General, let's consider this the first dispute since our meeting to be a draw, how about it?" Originally General Bob was also thinking about how to end it, and even how to blame the coalition forces, hoping to gain an advantage in the next joint meeting, but PoortoRich's statement made him somewhat unexpected, and he frowned. After looking at PoortoRich for a while, he had to snort and reluctantly responded. The other Allied generals also had ugly expressions on their faces, but General Bob recognized him, and they couldn't hold on to him anymore. It has to be said that Zhang is still old and hot. The original dispute between Wang Ling and Agent Tanya was beyond the expectations of PoortoRich. A good joint meeting, after Wang Ling's actions, is likely to be detrimental to the alliance. The military can use this to create hype. However, PoortoRich took the initiative and directly involved the dispute in the joint meeting, treating it as part of the game between the two sides, which left the allies speechless. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 464. Agent Tanya is a hero-level unit in the Allied forces. As General Bob's bodyguard, she has reached the rank of colonel. Her status in the Allied forces is indeed not low, even far higher than that of an ordinary field team leader. And Wang Ling is not simple. Although he has not yet obtained the hero-level unit, he is also the captain of the guard this time. He has the title of Combat Staff Officer and Reserve Commander. His military rank has also reached the level of colonel. Below the officer level, almost no one can compete with it. However, these two men were not promoted to officers after all. Their military ranks were still below those of commanders, and they were not considered to be the core senior leaders of the two armies. Although the fight between the two of them seems a bit eye-catching in this scene, in the final analysis it cannot affect the joint trend of the two armies. At best, it can only be regarded as friction between the subordinates of the two armies. Moreover, PoortoRich even reduced the impact of these frictions to the minimum level with one sentence, and the Allies could no longer take the opportunity to criticize. General William had previously sent an envoy to the Allied forces to discuss alliances. Naturally, he was also a representative of the side within the Allied forces that strongly advocated alliances. When the scene was a bit dull, he hurriedly smoothed things over. To put it bluntly, the dispute between Tanya and Wang Ling, it's just a grudge made during the war for hegemony. These are already old things. The most important thing now is the alliance between the two armies. Compared with this matter, all other things are trivial. That's right, the two of them have countless disputes on the coalition side. A commander immediately came down the slope. Other commanders and generals also agreed, and even the allies had to admit it. After the dispute was completely settled, PoortoRich took the initiative to speak. General Bob, on behalf of all the Allied forces, I welcome the arrival of all Allied generals. After the words fell, all the generals of the coalition forces who participated in the reception performed a neat military salute. The Allied forces did not lose their courtesy, and all the generals immediately returned the salute. Then General Bob said, "The battle between our two armies is just to gain dominance. It does not have to be fought to the end, but the Empire of the Heart has to destroy the enemy. Now the pressure on us from Yuri's troops is increasing. It's finally time for us to put aside our past grudges and join forces to fight." "Okay," PoortoRich responded, "it's almost noon now. Generals, you are tired from traveling, so don't stand outside all the time. Enter the castle to have a rest and have lunch. Then we will discuss in detail how to unite." Bar. It is better to obey orders than to be respectful. The two sides did not stop talking about the scene. After a few simple exchanges, the generals of both sides finally entered the eastern castle. Those participating in this meeting are all major generals at the lowest level, but when entering the eastern castle, there will inevitably be many guards and bodyguards. This is understandable. The coalition has already dispatched some mobilization troops and magnetic blast infantry to garrison inside. The Allied forces were naturally no exception. All the guards who had come with them had to follow the Allied generals and enter the castle. Wait. However, just when they were about to enter the castle, Wang Ling made another mistake and forcibly stopped them. How? The SEAL team member who had fought Wang Ling before and was defeated by one move asked. After all, he had been in contact with Wang Ling before, and his tone was quite calm, but the others were rude when they spoke. "What do you want to do again? Are you annoyed? Why are you everywhere? Why do you stop us?" These people are also very afraid of Wang Ling, but because of the conflict between Wang Ling and Tanya before, they don't have a good impression of Wang Ling. Not only them, but the Allied generals in front were also forced to stop and looked back. Some of them had obvious displeasure on their faces. Wang Ling didn't bother to care about his impression in these people's minds. He just looked at several SEALs and Agent Tanya and said, "Everyone else can enter, but you need to stay outside." "Why? We are the general's guards and bodyguards, why can't we come in?" Two SEAL members who had never had contact with Wang Ling asked. But Wang Ling was not to be outdone, "Because you are too dangerous. After all, the joint meeting has not been convened yet, and a final agreement has not been reached. Before that, all dangers must be ruled out. Are we still in danger, General?" The two SEALs were still unconvinced and even directly called the Allied generals in front, trying to overpower them. After those Allied generals glanced at each other, General William as the representative shook his head and said, "Forget it, the Allied forces are responsible for the security work. We just have the Allied soldiers to follow. You just stay outside. Take command of the field team." "Yes, General." After receiving the general's order, the SEALs said nothing more. However, Agent Tanya was like a thorn. "What if I say, I must go in?" As she spoke, she even looked at Wang Ling provocatively. After all, she was the bodyguard of the commander, General Bob. General Bob did not speak, and she could completely ignore the orders of other generals. Wang Ling squinted his eyes and looked at Tanya for a while, and then said without giving in, "You can go in if you want, but you have to leave your guns outside. It's too dangerous for you to carry two guns. If it's true, if something goes wrong, you can go on a killing spree in the castle, and I don't trust you at all. Don't go too far, Tanya, who was still provocative at first, felt as if she had been slapped on the butt after hearing this request, and became a little anxious. My 2 guns are my life, even if I won't let go when I'm with General Bob, and it's even more impossible to stay now. It seemed that it was rare to see Agent Tanya's anxious attitude. Wang Ling raised the corners of his mouth slightly, as if he wanted to be beaten. Then I'll forgive you and obey your orders. Stay outside. You are so unreasonable. His worries are not unreasonable, but in this current situation, there is always a sense of using his position to make things difficult for others. No wonder Agent Tanya is angry. These 2 people have been quarreling since they first met, and now they are quarreling again, making the scene gradually become more explosive. Okay, Wang Ling, since she is General Bob's bodyguard, let her come in with her at the critical moment. Major General Lovsky finally came to put out the fire, and Major General Lovsky began to persuade him. Since you have spoken, okay, you can go in. But, you 2 come here. Wang Ling finally relented, but this guy was obviously still targeting Agent Tanya, pointing at 2 radiation engineers from a distance. After the 2 radiation engineers arrived, Wang Ling ordered, you 2 will also temporarily join the castle guards and station themselves in the main conference hall. Once Agent Tanya wants to rebel and pulls out a gun to kill people, you will immediately deploy and radiate the entire eastern castle. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 465. Yes. The 2 radiation engineers were members of Sun Chiming's dog team and were very familiar with Wang Ling. Even though they were all generals from all sides, they obeyed the orders of Wang Ling, the captain of the guard. They complied with Wang Ling's crazy order almost without thinking, as if it was a matter of course. What? However, the other generals, whether they were coalition forces or allied forces, were all severely shocked by this order. The deployment of radiation engineers is no joke. This unit will insert the radiation reactor into the ground and release all the strong radiation in the reactor, polluting a large area of land. Once the ground infantry is exposed to such strong radiation, most of the infantry will be melted into a puddle of thick water almost instantly. Some infantry with strong vitality can resist for a while, but the health bar will continue to shrink. When the health bar is exhausted, exhaustion is also the result of being melted. Even tanks will continue to suffer radiation damage when exposed to this environment, but it will not be as miserable as infantry. If these 2 radiation engineers are deployed in the main conference hall and radiate the entire eastern castle, then the entire castle will turn into a purgatory on Earth in an instant, and everyone inside will be killed, including all our own generals and guard included. This deployment is basically a way of destroying everything. To put it more plainly, if you dare to draw a gun, I will destroy the entire castle and everyone will die together. I have to say that this deployment is really crazy and ruthless. Originally, when Wang Ling blocked Agent Tanya, many generals from both sides were watching the excitement of these 2 people and wanted to see how they would end. It had nothing to do with them. But now, Wang Ling, a lunatic, has brought out all the radiation engineers. He is determined to drag everyone to death. Can these generals still calm down? Wang Ling, calm down. The first to stop him were some generals from the coalition forces. Don't be so impulsive, this is too extreme. We are discussing a union. Even if it sounds ugly, it is still a negotiation. How come we have to draw our guns? You arranged to bring in 2 radiation engineers. What if there is a dispute because of this? Everyone will die. Do they know how terrifying the radiation engineers are after they are deployed? How dare they let this type of troops enter the eastern castle? Don't be afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of the unexpected. What if either of them can't figure it out and actually deploy it? Of course, as old opponents of the Allied forces, the generals of the Allied forces also knew the role of radiation engineers, and now all their faces have changed. Wang Ling, have you had enough trouble? You have been causing trouble since we came here, and now you are threatening us all with radiation engineers. What are your intentions? No, radiation engineers must not enter the Eastern Castle, otherwise I refuse to negotiate. Yes, I would be restless if there were such dangerous troops following me. If the radiation engineers are to be used as escorts, I don't think the two armies should join forces. When it comes to their own security issues, how can these Allied generals be willing to make concessions? Almost no one agreed to let the radiation engineers enter the castle. Agent Tanya, after being annoyed for a while, burst out laughing, Wang Ling, am I just so afraid of you? In order to restrain me, you actually sent out radiation engineers, and even though you were scolded by all the generals, the pressure, threatening me with everyone's lives? Snort. Under all the accusations, Wang Ling refused to give in. He glanced at the Allied generals, and finally focused on Tanya. He snorted coldly and said, pretend to be confused while pretending to understand. If I don't deploy like this, you won't have any natural enemies in the castle, and you can be unscrupulous. Your double guns have the ability to instantly kill infantry units, and there is no restriction on your strength. Once the gunfire breaks out in the meeting, you can kill me instantly. All the generals of the coalition forces, how can this make me feel relieved? This explanation was not taken seriously by the Allied forces, but within the Allied forces, the generals who had previously reprimanded Wang Ling narrowed their pupils in an instant and understood what Wang Ling was worried about. However, this is not over yet. Wang Ling is still explaining, to take a step back, you are not the enemy in the joint meeting, but standing in the conference room with guns inserted, all the generals of our coalition forces seem to have a bullet on their heads. It's like a bullet that could kill you at any time. How can you negotiate under such pressure? Right. It seems, that's really what happened. It turns out that Agent Tanya still has this role. Wang Ling's last words really spoke to the hearts of all the coalition generals. All the generals felt suddenly aware and raised their eyebrows. Some of the generals who were awakened even silently gave Wang Ling a thumbs up. Although Wang Ling had made many military exploits before, his military rank was promoted rapidly, and he even held the title of reserve commander, but this military rank became more and more difficult to promote. Wang Ling was not promoted to the officer level. There were always some arrogant generals, and he didn't really take Wang Ling seriously. But now, through this incident, all the contempt for Wang Ling in the hearts of those arrogant generals has been wiped away. Not only that, some generals even turned to look at the allies with a little doubt in their expressions. Under questioning, General Bob finally spoke with a dark face, "Is that Wang Ling? You are thinking too much. Tanya is my personal bodyguard, I need her to stay by my side. And the radiation engineer is against our threat is too great and we are absolutely not allowed to enter the castle. We are just discussing alliance, not fighting for life or death. If you continue to make things difficult, I will have to reconsider whether this joint meeting should be held." It seems that General Bob is really angry, and he even doesn't hesitate to use the joint meeting as an issue. "General, what you should be thinking about now is not the joint meeting." However, Wang Ling refused to listen to him. Facing the Allied commander, his attitude was unprecedentedly tough. "What you should consider is whether you can enter the Eastern Castle. You said radiation engineers are dangerous, but Tanya agents are also a threat to our coalition generals. Why can agents Tanya enter but not radiation engineers? Is it true that only the safety of your allied generals deserves attention, and the safety of our coalition generals is not? Did you mention it?" When General Bob heard this, his face became even more ugly. However, Wang Ling's tougher words were yet to come. In one sentence, two choices. Either Agent Tanya stays, or you enter the castle with the radiation engineers as a guard. "General, this is my bottom line, no one can cross it. even if you are the commander of the Allied forces. This is the territory of our Allied forces. I am the chief of guard for this joint meeting, and I am the boss here when it comes to guarding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 466. Wang Ling's words could not be described as arrogant. Everyone at the scene, whether they were allies or coalition forces, all officers and guards, were shocked. The people who are about to enter Dongfang Castle now, except for the guards, are all at the officer level, and they are all generals. Although Wang Ling is the captain of the guard, he is still just a colonel in the end, but he said that he is the top guard when it comes to guard issues. Boss, he's not even the commander of the Allied forces, he's just not saying anything amazing and he's going to die. After a while of surprise, the faces of many Allied generals became more and more ugly. General Bob was even happy, ha ha ha, okay, great. Along the way, the talents I have met are like crossing the river, but I have never seen a senior colonel as arrogant as you. So what if you are the captain of the guard? After all, you are just a senior colonel. Where do you get the rights and the qualifications to tell me what to do? It can be said that Wang Ling and him are not on the same level at all, but as a 5-star general and commander, General Bob has competed with Wang Ling, which shows how angry he is now. Wang Ling did not respond to these words, but just stared at General Bob, with an unnecessarily determined determination in his eyes. If you want to enter the Eastern Castle, Wang Ling must pass this level. Seeing the smell of gunpowder gradually filling the scene, PoortoRich finally couldn't stand it anymore and interrupted, "Ahem, what's the big deal? It's so tense. Wang Ling, how did you talk to the Allied commander? Have you forgotten who you are? Did I give you the position of head guard to let you mess around here? The old routine, if there is a conflict between two parties, reprimand your own subordinates first to avoid escalation of the conflict." However, although it was a reprimand, PoortoRich was stern and restrained, with no intention of blaming him at all, not even any verbal punishment, just a few symbolic curses. After Wang Ling heard this, his expression softened, but he still refused to give way. Then, PoortoRich turned to the allies and said, "General Bob, you too, why are you competing with a colonel like him? This is beneath your status." In this matter, Wang Ling did go too far. But, after all, he is the captain of the guard appointed by me personally, and we have to consider his concerns. General Bob, although this is a joint meeting, this is our territory after all, and the allies are guests, and guests are welcome. Lord, for the sake of safety, Agent Tanya and the radiation engineers should stay outside. This old man spoke in a polite and approachable manner on the surface, but in fact he was undermining the allies in every word, unabashedly favoring Wang Ling, and even used the saying "the guest does as he pleases," making it clear that this is my territory. You have to follow my rules when you come to the meeting. And among the generals present, which one is not a veteran? Who among them doesn't understand what PoortoRich means? Many generals in the Allied forces were suppressing their anger, but PoortoRich used safety as an excuse. They could not learn from Wang Ling's toughness and recklessness. General Bob had a grim look on his face. Even the commander of the coalition forces had made a request. He couldn't stand the stalemate any longer. He snorted coldly and said, "Okay. Tanya, you can stay outside and command the troops for the time being." "Yes, General." Agent Tanya had no choice but to remain unconvinced. Afterwards, General Bob took a deep look at Wang Ling, snorted coldly, and then said, "PoortoRich, you really appointed an amazing guard captain this time." After saying that, he couldn't even wait for PoortoRich to respond, and took the Allied generals directly into the Eastern Castle. During this period, his face never looked good. Although the negotiation between the two armies is to unite, the process itself is just like a game. The Allies were the first to lose their composure and proposed a coalition. As a result, the Allies directly designated a location for meetings and negotiations, which in itself put the Allies at a disadvantage. Therefore, General Bob did have an idea. With the help of Agent Tanya's bodyguard, he stood behind him with guns inserted during the meeting. This in itself was equivalent to a threat, so that the coalition generals would have some scruples and let the meeting. The power was tilted in favor of the Allies to regain the situation. But who could have imagined that Wang Ling would suddenly appear on the way despite all the good arrangements? What Wang Ling did this time was tough and a bit wild, but what he wanted to prevent was really what General Bob wanted to do. Before the plan could even start, Wang Ling disrupted it from the beginning. Can it not be popular? In comparison, Wang Ling's previous tough attitude was no longer worth his irritation. Haha, thank you, this was obviously an irony, but PoortoRich seemed to not understand it and was cheerful. Not only him, but other Allied generals were also secretly happy. They were very happy to see the Allied forces defeated. Many generals even turned their hands behind their backs when entering the castle and gave Wang Ling a thumbs up. After this incident of forcibly confronting the Allied commander, Wang Ling became completely popular among both the Allied and Allied forces. Telling the truth would be enough for him to brag for a lifetime. However, Wang Ling did not feel proud of having done such a thing himself, even to the point where the Allied commander had to comply with his arrangements. After these generals and guards entered the eastern castle one after another, Wang Ling glanced at Agent Tanya indifferently, turned around and wanted to leave without saying a word. Stop, however, Agent Tanya temporarily stopped him. Wang Ling stopped and said without looking back, "What's the matter?" After being targeted by Wang Ling for so long, while the other generals were away, Agent Tanya also wanted to embarrass Wang Ling. "You have worked so hard to stop me, are you satisfied now?" Boring, however, Wang Ling was too lazy to pay attention to her, shook his head and continued walking. Tanya suddenly felt like she had been punched on cotton, and she felt very unhappy inside. The situation was not suitable to draw a gun now, so she simply did not touch the two guns. Instead, she rushed towards Wang Ling from behind, trying to kill him with close combat. Wang Ling suddenly showed off his power. Able to become a hero-level unit of the Allies, Tanya is also very powerful in close combat in addition to her terrifying double guns. She uses her killing move to hit Wang Ling's neck with her elbow and grab Wang Ling with her other hand. Ling's spine. These two moves are very fierce. Any one of them used in Tanya's hands can instantly kill an average infantryman. However, Wang Ling was not in this group. Feeling the fierce aura coming from behind, he immediately stopped, turned around quickly, stretched out his palm to easily block Tanya's elbow, and his other hand was like iron. He grabbed her wrist tightly like a pair of pincers, and these two killing moves were blocked so lightly in the end. Snort. But Agent Tanya was still unconvinced and raised her leg to sweep forward, trying to kick Wang Ling in the temple. However, Wang Ling's kick was nearly twice as fast as hers. As soon as she raised her foot, Wang Ling's kick stopped 5 centimeters from the side of her face. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 467. Call. Wang Ling's kick was too fast and stopped too sharply. The moment after it stopped, a strong leg wind swept towards Agent Tanya, messing up her unsightly hairstyle. With the power of Wang Ling's kick, even Agent Tanya might die if he really kicked it. Feeling the power of this kick from the wind in her legs, Agent Tanya was frightened. Her whole body couldn't help but tremble for a moment. The half-raised kick stopped in mid-air, but when she lifted it up, neither does falling. But just when he was horrified, Wang Ling spoke, "Even if it's a close combat, without using two guns, you are still no match for me." After saying that, Wang Ling finally put his foot down and let go of his hand. After regaining his freedom, Agent Tanya took 2 steps back, stretched her pinched wrist, stared at Wang Ling for a while, and then cursed, "You are such a pervert. Why is there someone like you in the coalition forces, figure? Are you perverted? You are not the first person to call me this name." Wang Ling had long been accustomed to this title and was not angry. He looked at Agent Tanya with an indifferent expression. The coalition and allied forces are about to unite to fight against the Mind Empire. Although I don't want to admit it, after joining forces, we will become comrade. During this period, I can temporarily put aside my hatred and will not attack you, but you must also be more careful. If you attack me again, I may not be able to control it well one day and kill you. For the sake of this alliance and the Allies' military technology, Wang Ling had already made the greatest concessions, and even had to temporarily put aside his hatred for Agent Tanya. However, Agent Tanya didn't seem to appreciate it very much. "Tch, why are you so awesome? Who doesn't care about the alliance between the 2 armies? If I can really kill him, I will just draw my gun, and the person who will die will definitely be you." "Humph, whatever you say." Wang Ling was too lazy to confront her anymore. He turned around and waved his hand. "A group of old fritters are having a meeting, which will definitely last a long, long time. I am the chief of the guard here, and during this period, you can also be regarded as my subordinate. However, I don't want you to command the allied forces, just take your 2 field teams with you and watch the deployment. We will take care of 3 meals a day." After saying that, Wang Ling left here without looking back. But after he left, Agent Tanya also restrained her previous aggrieved and competitive look, and involuntarily pulled out her 2 guns, turning them habitually, while still muttering, "Wang Ling. Wang Ling, it's really better to meet him than to be famous. This man is wild, arrogant, and arrogant. He is really annoying at first sight. However, this pervert is really manly. He is so powerful that he has the rank of senior colonel. You dare to go head-to-head with General Bob. It's really brave. If he is not from the coalition, you can consider pulling him over to be a wild man. Oh, what a pity, how come he is from the coalition?" After muttering, Agent Tanya looked back at the eastern castle again, and she actually felt a little gloating. "General, it's not that I don't help, as you have seen, there is a pervert who has been targeting me, and I can't go in to help you. During this meeting, just wish yourself good luck." Wang Ling probably never dreamed that Agent Tanya would be so open-minded. After such a short period of getting along with him, she was even targeted by him, and in the end she even wanted to make him a wild man. If these words reached his ears, he wouldn't know how depressed he would be. Now, a large number of high-level generals from the coalition and allied forces have gathered in this eastern castle. As the captain of the guard, Wang Ling now has to be nervous and cautious. After returning to his position, he continues to make various deployments and adjustments. During the meeting, he must ensure that the security of the castle. Of course, this holy city has not been affected by the war after all. There is currently no trace of Yuri's troops in this large area on the electronic map, and the guarding task is actually not as difficult as imagined. It is exactly what Wang Ling said. When these generals meet, it is impossible to come up with a result within a short period of time, or even a few days. After all, no party will take the initiative to make concessions. During this period, the escort mission will naturally continue all the time. For this reason, Wang Ling did not stop the construction of the temporary base. After the nuclear power plant and a bunch of defensive buildings, Wang Ling sent elite engineers to quickly build a tank factory in the afternoon, and ordered the tank factory to quickly build a tank factory. 3 to 5 armed mining vehicles were produced. There are not many minerals in the Oriental Castle area, but there are still some, and there are even traces of some gem mines. Wang Ling will not let these go. After the armed mining vehicles were in place and started working, Wang Ling ordered a batch of various tanks and vehicles to be made as backup. Later, a maintenance factory was even built as a precautionary measure so that it would not be built in time if an enemy attacked. That's not all. After taking a look at the electronic map as a whole, Wang Ling still felt that something was missing. After a brief observation, he sent engineers to build a wall around the eastern castle, leaving only 2 entrances and exits. Even walls were built beside the 2 bridges. Although it is only a temporary base, after the series of construction, its defense power has gradually caught up with a complete coalition base. And after such a long period of construction, time passed quietly without realizing it, and it was night in the blink of an eye. I don't know how far the meeting of the generals in the castle has progressed. There is no movement at all. Obviously, there is no result today. However, Wang Ling was not in a hurry. As he watched his construction results on the electronic map that night, he felt a small sense of accomplishment in his heart. It seemed that he had regained the feeling of giving guidance and scolding Fang Qiu in the game in real life. Hey, Wang Ling. Just as Wang Ling was looking at the electronic map, feeling somewhat complacent, Agent Tanya appeared out of nowhere and found him. What's wrong? If you don't go to your allied camp to lead the team, why are you here? Wang Ling asked. Agent Tanya snorted and said, what's there to lead? I can't even see a shadow of the enemy. It's really tiring to stay all the time. Let's not talk about that for now. Wang Ling, the satellite signals of your coalition forces are not going to be used. Can you please give me some permission? There is no signal on our electronic display, and the electronic map is completely dark, which I am not used to. Feelings are here for radar signals. In this regard, Wang Ling was not too stingy. You can relax the authority, but I'm afraid that your allies won't be used to our signals. What's wrong with this? Does the strength of your signal depend on the person? Agent Tanya was puzzled. Wang Ling smiled and said nothing, and directly ordered to release the radar signal authority. After receiving the signal, Agent Tanya couldn't wait to open the electronic map, but when she saw it for the first time, she frowned. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 468. Previously, I was accustomed to modern warfare and always liked to stare at the electronic map when I had nothing to do. Without the assistance of the electronic map, Agent Tanya felt uncomfortable and unaccustomed to it. However, when she finally asked Wang Ling for signal permissions, she was a little confused after opening the electronic map, because the electronic map did not display the entire map, only the area that had been manually explored. Other unexplored areas are still dark. This situation is like the electronic map when the Allied forces only built an air command headquarters but not spy satellites. It is simply a manifestation of the imperfect base construction. Hey, why is your satellite signal like this? You can only see part of the map, so how do you usually fight? After being confused, Agent Tanya finally complained. In fact, Wang Ling has been criticizing this for a long time. He is not surprised by this complaint. To correct you, our coalition does not have the satellite technology of the Allies. We use radar. The one I just opened is also a radar signal. The specific utility is just like the electronic map after you built the air command headquarters, which is far less practical than the spy satellites of your allies. As for fighting, there is no need to bother with this. This is how we got here. Relying on this simple radar technology is at a stalemate with your allies until now. Is this okay? Really, what do those commanders do? They can't grasp such a huge advantage. Are they all useless? After hearing this, Tanya actually cursed her commander in front of Wang Ling, which made Wang Ling shocked. He knew that this girl was open, but just now she didn't seem to be open anymore. She was simply fierce and unscrupulous. Wang Ling was arrogant, and he was so confident as a guard captain that he even dared to confront the allied commander. However, No matter how arrogant he was, he would not dare to speak ill of his own commander. Is it because the military style is different? Wang Ling muttered in a low voice. What? Agent Tanya heard it, but she didn't know what Wang Ling was surprised about, but Wang Ling quickly shook his head and dismissed it. I have to say that Agent Tanya is really like a hot pepper. She was still cursing her own commander in the last sentence, but in the next sentence, she criticized the coalition forces again. You coalition forces are really good at it. With this simple radar technology is so valuable, how did it become so powerful that it dares to compete with our allies for hegemony? Cut. Wang Ling naturally refused to admit his defeat, and specifically pointed out the sore points of the allies and said, you still have the nerve to criticize us? Don't forget, if Yuri hadn't suddenly rebelled in our battle for hegemony, there is a great possibility that your allies would have lost by now. Come on. Tell me, why are we inflated? Why are we fighting for hegemony with you? You. Don't mention anything. Agent Tanya was choked by this harsh words and felt very uncomfortable. She couldn't help but glared at Wang Ling fiercely. As an old rival and former enemy, Wang Ling was happy to see her impatience. He laughed playfully a few times, and then spoke frankly, when it comes to criticizing radar signals, I don't do it twice a day. Oh my God, I have to admit that the coalition forces are indeed inferior to the allied forces in some advanced technologies. However, it is precisely because of this that there is an opportunity for the two armies to join forces. Otherwise, you would think that the coalition forces are not lacking in any technology. There is no shortage of firepower output. Will those generals agree to join forces with the allies? This sentence makes sense. In the end, these two bitter enemies actually agreed on the same opinion, which is quite rare. Regardless of whether the radar signal is advanced or not, finding Wang Ling this time has finally given the authority, and the allied forces can also borrow the coalition's radar signal. After the stalemate was over, Agent Tanya walked back to the allied forces station while looking at the electronic map. After she left, Wang Ling wandered around for a while, observed everywhere, and found no problems, so he arranged for the 6 field groups to rest in 3 shifts. After all, this joint meeting has a far-reaching impact and is of great significance. With the temperament of those generals, there is probably no agreement that both parties can agree on within a few days. During this period, Wang Ling will certainly not spend time here day and night, and will rest that night. Then he returned to the real world. After a day of rest and playing with Xiaohei for a long time, he returned after having enough energy. On the second day of the meeting, everything was business as usual. The coalition and allied forces stood still and were stationed separately. There was no movement in the eastern castle. The generals from both sides must be still fighting fiercely over various interests. However, these have nothing to do with Wang Ling for the time being. He is only responsible for security issues. Now, there is no trace of Yuri's troops in the eastern castle area. It is still very safe on the whole. There is enough time for these generals to quarrel and come to a conclusion. Nothing noteworthy happened during the second day of the meeting. Under the step-by-step watch, the third day soon came. It seemed that they had been doing nothing for nearly 2 consecutive days. On this day, Agent Tanya was bored and privately mobilized a multi-purpose infantry vehicle, drove across the bridge, and drove out of the Oriental Castle area. What does she want to do? Seeing this scene on the electronic map, Wang Ling was a little worried, fearing that this girl would cause trouble. However, just as he was about to ask her what her intentions were, the multifunctional infantry vehicle on the electronic map had already entered the unexplored area on the other side of the bridge, and the dark area on the electronic map was also explored by it. Agent Tanya, on the other hand, has been staring at the electronic monitor, watching with concentration, while giving orders to the multi-purpose infantry vehicle to continuously move and explore along the nearby dark area. Seeing this, Wang Ling finally understood. The feeling is that this guy is really not used to the coalition's electronic map, and wants to explore all the dark areas on the entire electronic map through manual exploration. It has to be said that this method is old enough and willful enough. Although Wang Ling criticized the limitations of radar signals, he never thought of exploring in this way. He never expected that Agent Tanya would do this. Are you so restless? Or do you really look down on the Allied forces' radar signal and you actually used an infantry vehicle to explore manually? After observing for a while, Wang Ling couldn't hold back and walked to the Allied forces station to find Tanya. He became sarcastic. Agent Tanya was also very embarrassed. You have the nerve to ask me? As for the radar signal of your coalition forces, before it was explored, it was like looking at flowers in the smoke, which is a little better than nothing. With such a small visible area, you think it's too limiting? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 469. Buzz. Buzz. In the Holy City, the multifunctional infantry vehicle relies on its superior mobility and is still speeding through the city. Following Agent Tanya's orders, this multifunctional infantry vehicle was like a scanner, always moving along the outermost edge of the unexplored area, sweeping through one floor, and then moving forward to sweep the next floor. Wherever they went, all the dark areas were manually explored, and their detailed features were presented on the electronic map. During this period, we would naturally encounter buildings. The infantry vehicles would go through them if they could. If there was no room, they would go around them and try to reach the place designated by Agent Tanya as quickly as possible. While this multifunctional infantry vehicle was working, at the Eastern Castle Allied Forces Station, Agent Tanya, after specifying a series of location coordinates, said to Wang Ling, "To be honest, sometimes I don't know why your coalition is fighting the war. Look at your radar signal. Without special exploration, the visible area is just as big as half of the eyes of Mengshan. How can it be like our coalition, with satellite signals? Next, you have a clear view of the entire map, and you can even see the situation in your coalition base clearly." In this regard, Agent Tanya finally regained her sense of superiority. But Wang Ling couldn't argue with this. The Allied forces' use of electronic maps is indeed much better than that of the coalition forces. Not only does the satellite signal cover the entire battlefield, allowing a panoramic view of the entire map, but they also cunningly developed a crack generator to cover their own base alone. Even if the coalition forces explore, attack, manually explore, leave or fail, they will be interfered by the crack generator, leaving a circle of unexplored black area on the electronic map. TCH. A bunch of bastards with no firepower. Seeing that Wang Ling didn't speak, Agent Tanya felt bored and sarcastic, then continued to look at the electronic map and directed along the road. When Wang Ling came here, in addition to being curious, he inevitably also had some sarcastic mentality. However, he didn't expect that Agent Tanya would give him a lesson in the end, and he immediately became a little angry. However, after clenching his fists and gritting his teeth and glaring at Agent Tanya for a while, Wang Ling did not show his anger and left with a cold snort. Buzz. Buzz. The exploration of multifunctional infantry vehicles continues. The speed of this kind of vehicle is not even slower than that of a helicopter, and it is suitable for manual exploration of the map. Under the instructions of Agent Tanya, this holy city, which was originally spread across unexplored areas, was finally explored bit by bit, just like a beautiful girl covered with a veil, the mystery of which was gradually revealed, bit by bit. Revealed his true appearance. With the help of the electronic map, we can find that this holy city is dotted with tall buildings, either towering like giants or as delicate as gift boxes. There are also wide roads and some parks. At a glance, it seems that you can tell bustling and lively before the war. However, due to the battle for hegemony, everything here now seems deserted and deserted, seeming to tell a period of desolation and helplessness. Although Wang Ling sighed a little at this, he was still used to the situation and was not too pretentious. After sighing, he was still staring at the electronic map. Of course, in addition to high-rise buildings and row upon row of streets, what is left of this holy city also has other surprises. On some boundaries within the city, there are also patches of mines. Although the total amount is not too much, it is better than nothing. The most important thing is that after a period of exploration by the multifunctional infantry vehicle, 2 unoccupied oil production plants unexpectedly appeared near a modern factory. Damn, what an unexpected surprise. Engineer, anti-aircraft crawler vehicle, get on it quickly. Wang Ling followed the fallacy of a man has no shame and is invincible and don't take advantage, you're a bastard. It was obviously discovered by the Allied Forces agent Tanya, but he had preconceived ideas and hurriedly dispatched 2 engineers to get into a car. The anti-aircraft crawler vehicle was dispatched before Tanya could even react. The Allied multifunctional infantry vehicles are very fast, but after all, the holy city is not too small. It has taken a long time to explore layer by layer. In fact, the 2 oil production plants are far away from the eastern holy city. The city area was not too far away. The coalition anti-aircraft tracked vehicle went straight to the target. It soon arrived near the area and dropped off 2 engineers. After the 2 engineers landed, they also acted quickly and each occupied an oil production plant. The originally ownerless oil production plant was immediately owned by the coalition forces, and they were transporting oil and providing combat funds for the coalition forces at all times. Seeing this scene from the electronic map, Agent Tanya was stunned for a moment. She looked at the coalition station from a distance and cursed with gritted teeth, this shameless Wang Ling. You go and seize what we have discovered. How can you be so thick-skinned, a little? Haha, it's good to explore the map. These 2 oil production plants smell so good. Compared to Agent Tanya's annoyance, Wang Ling was extremely happy. He is said to be shameless, but this shameless characteristic has really come into play. Fortunately, the 2 armies were not too close together, so Agent Tanya couldn't hear these words. If she really heard them, she might be very depressed. However, I can only be depressed because this time it is mainly the coalition forces responsible for the escort, and they carry a full range of troops, including engineers. However, when the Allied forces came this time, they only followed the combat arms of the field group. Even if they wanted to seize the opportunity, they could not do it. Thinking of this, Agent Tanya finally felt relieved. She glared at the direction of the coalition station and then looked at the electronic map again, marking the coordinates along the way. Under her joint exploration with the multifunctional infantry vehicle, more and more mysteries of the entire holy city were revealed. After more than half a day, about 80% of the area had been explored, leaving only down some areas at the end. After taking a look at the current electronic map, Agent Tanya nodded slightly with satisfaction. This is considered an electronic map. These coalition forces are so stubborn that they can still guard such a small visible area with peace of mind. Even if they are attacked by you, don't even know that Yuri's troops are surrounding you, right? After shaking her head, Agent Tanya continued to order the exploration. Only the last 20% of the unexplored area was left, so she simply explored it in one go. There was nothing else to do now anyway. Under her command, the multifunctional infantry vehicle started moving quickly again. According to her vision, it is estimated that the entire holy city will be explored in a short time, and the multifunctional infantry vehicle can return safely after completing the mission. However, an accident happened at this juncture. Just when the multifunctional infantry vehicle broke into the last area and tried to complete the exploration in one go, some purple light spots appeared in that area. Looking closer, they turned out to be Yuri recruits. Today's chapter has been updated ahead of schedule due to a chapter recommendation. My old classmate in Liuyuan, Miss Wuki Wutong, she asked to be called Little Brother, who was originally the master of Ikiyi literature, recently went to Kidian to write articles, but it was embarrassing when I caught up. The editor returned from the Chinese New Year holiday. Home, I have more than 100,000 words and still no recommendations, which is a bit difficult. My situation here is also very special. The starting point is temporarily unable to synchronize serialization. I don't know how many old readers and friends have been lost. The chapter recommendation may not be of any use at all, but it can be considered as doing my little bit to help. I hope that my little brother can avoid some detours. Little brother Kidian uses the pen name Strange Egg Tart and serializes the novel My Personality is Not Simple, which belongs to Kidian Men's Light Novel channel. It can also be found on Credding. If you are interested, give it a try. I originally promised to update it yesterday, but I was so busy yesterday that I forgot about it, which was embarrassing, so I updated it in advance today to avoid forgetting it later. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 470. Huh? Why did Yuri's troops appear? Yuri recruits? Why are they here? At this moment, Agent Tanya and Wang Ling were both shocked. Yuri troops appear at the edge of the holy city. What does this mean? As the third largest force that can compete with the coalition forces and the allied forces, the Seoul Empire also has a very large number of troops. Once there are traces of Yuri's troops, it is impossible to have only a few Yuri recruits. Behind these Yuri recruits, there must be other Yuri troops. These Yuri troops may be just exploration teams sent by the Empire of Mind, gradually exploring the map, or they may just be passing by and happen to meet up with a multi-purpose infantry vehicle, or maybe they are patrolling. There might be a base for Yuri's troops outside the holy city. In normal times, it would be a good thing to be able to proactively discover Yuri's troops. At least they can prepare corresponding defenses in advance, and even explore further and then take the initiative to attack. But now, a large number of senior officials from the coalition and allied forces are discussing joint matters in the Eastern Castle. There is absolutely no room for any mistakes in security issues. Those three possible situations, no matter which one they are not a good thing for the current coalition and allied forces. There are a lot of field teams stationed in the Eastern Castle, but who knows how many Yuri troops there are. Of course, the most important thing is that the multifunctional infantry vehicle has now met Yuri's new recruits, which is equivalent to reminding Yuri's troops that there are allied troops nearby, and maybe even allied bases. No. No matter how you say it, this is a dangerous signal, and it has actually happened. Just when Agent Tanya and Wang Ling were surprised, the 5 or 6 Yuri recruits had also discovered the multi-purpose infantry vehicle, and the two sides had already exchanged fire as soon as they met. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Swish. Swish. Yuri's new recruit's attack method is still the same. He uses the psychic helmet to gather spiritual energy and fire it out, just like a substantial flame, shooting at the body of the multifunctional infantry vehicle, causing it to continuously burst into flames. The attack power of Yuri's new recruits, individually, is stronger than that of the coalition conscripts and allied soldiers. In addition, the multi-purpose infantry vehicle's health and armor are inherently low. This encounter between the two sides immediately resulted in an overwhelming situation. In a shocking scene, under the concentrated fire of 5 or 6 Yuri recruits, the multi-purpose infantry vehicle's health bar decreased rapidly, and was quickly knocked out by half. During this period, the multifunctional infantry vehicle was also counter-attacking. However, before this infantry vehicle could advance to the 3-star elite level, its power was always limited. Several missiles fired in succession only managed to reduce a Yuri recruit to residual health. It was already seriously damaged. Hateful. Seeing that this multifunctional infantry vehicle was defeated and about to explode soon, Agent Tanya was very unwilling to do so. She even decided to give up the counterattack and force the multifunctional infantry vehicle to run away. Of course, instead of running back, he went in the opposite direction and continued to rush into those unexplored areas, using his remaining energy to continue exploring more electronic maps. When something like this happened during the exploration and encountered Yuri's troops, the multifunctional infantry vehicle was naturally unable to explore in an orderly manner as before. Instead, it simply stayed in the middle of the road, passed through the area where Yuri's recruits were, and rushed deeper. As expected, something fishy was discovered during this rush. These Yuri recruits seemed to be only a small part of Yuri's large army. As the infantry vehicles continued to rampage, the subsequent exploration of the area showed that a large number of Yuri recruits appeared, including some beast-like soldiers, a few psychic troops, and some tanks were also stationed. After receiving the alarm from the Yuri recruits in front, all these Yuri troops were now on alert. Seeing the multifunctional infantry vehicle with residual health coming, the group of Yuri recruits at the front unceremoniously started firing and exploded almost in the blink of an eye. Even the psychic troops who came later and tried to use their mind control skills didn't have time to take action, and the tanks from behind didn't even have time to catch up. And with the explosion of this multifunctional infantry vehicle, Tanya's exploration plan was finally forced to come to an end. However, Agent Tanya was not happy at all. This exploration really revealed news that made them sleepless. There were Yuri troops near the holy city. Wang Ling. In shock, Agent Tanya hurried to the coalition station, found Wang Ling, and raised an army to question him. This is the meeting place chosen by your coalition forces? How come there are Yuri troops? Wang Ling was not to be outdone. The Yuri troops are not fixed. Even some bases of your allies were attacked by Yuri troops and suffered heavy losses. Our coalition's electronic map technology is not as good as yours. There are Yuri troops on the edge of the holy city. I didn't know that before. You have the nerve to say, look at your sloppy radar signal. Guarding such a small visible area, I never thought of actively exploring it before. Now, there are really Yuri troops here. If they hadn't explored it in advance, we would have let them know when the time comes. Yuri's troops took the initiative to find us and surrounded us without anyone noticing. Do you know how serious the consequences would be? There are a large number of generals from both armies gathered in the eastern castle. Can you afford the security issue? You're still talking about me? Do you think all the troops have your satellite technology? The Empire of Mind doesn't have that kind of technology. Their electronic map is the same as ours. They don't know it at all before fully exploring the holy city. We are here. How good it is now. You took the initiative to explore and came to the door. Didn't you give them a disguised reminder and say that we are here? Although the generals were in a stalemate in the meeting, they were in a stalemate for a while. Under pressure, we can always reach an agreement. When the time comes to retreat, Yuri's troops may not even have time to explore here. Well, now, you took the initiative to remind others. Isn't this urging them to explore and putting pressure on us? The two of them each had their own ideas on this issue, and they were arguing for a while. Now, the generals of both sides are still arguing with each other. The eastern castle area can be said to be very important and must not be missed. However, the Yuri troops that have been discovered now have brought considerable pressure to them. As the coalition forces, of course, Agents Wang Ling and Tanya, the leaders of the Allied escort, were sensitive. However, now is really not the time to argue. Just as the two of them were arguing, it could be seen on the electronic map that more than 10 tanks from Yuri's army had been dispatched and began to circle around the holy city. Following the actions of Agent Tanya before, it is obvious that Yuri's troops are also exploring the electronic map of the holy city.